As we continue our little series about how I eat and how I beat diabetes, I'm going to talk about a restaurant that I went to recently, and it was probably the last restaurant most diabetics would want to go. It was an Olive Garden, and in case you don't know about Olive Garden, it is an Italian restaurant, and their specialty is noodles and bread, which are basically two enemies of diabetics, noodles and bread. And yeah, they serve, most of their dishes are some kind of a meat in some kind of a cheesy sauce over a big bed of noodles. Now, the meat we have no problem with. The cheese, not much of a problem there. But boy, those noodles are not so good. So Olive Garden, this kind of a restaurant, is not something I would choose to go to normally, but sometimes you find yourself at places due to others, and you just have to make do and do the best you can with it. So here I was at an Olive Garden, and I looked at the menu. It was one noodle dish after another. They have fancy Italian names to them, but they're all noodles with some cheesy sauce and a little bit of meat in them. And of course, they do have nice salads, and the salads are not a problem so much, but I was looking through the menu trying to find out what can I eat here. Well, I knew there would be at least one or two options. You can always get a salad and just stuff yourself with salad, no problem. But I just wasn't in the mood to just fill myself up with a salad. I didn't mind eating a side salad, but I didn't want to make the salad my whole meal. So I looked it over, and I found an old favorite that I have often eaten at these kind of restaurants, and it was the salmon with broccoli, and then I had a side salad as well, along with others that were there with me. So that worked for me beautifully. But let's just pause and have a little talk about the two really bad guys at these Italian restaurants, and that would be the noodles and the bread rolls. Whenever you go into an Olive Garden, guess what? They'll give you about as many bread rolls as you can eat. And if you eat all your bread rolls and ask for some more, they'll bring you some more. And if you eat all those and ask for some more, they'll bring you some more. So bread rolls are plentiful. And of course, they're white bread. They're blood sugar spiking. They're unhealthy. They have almost no nutrients to them. And all they do is fill your stomach. In a sense, they're very much the equivalent of what you'd get at a Mexican restaurant where you sit down and they immediately bring you chips and salsa. And they'll just fill a plate with chips or fill a bowl with chips. And when you finish all those chips, they'll bring you some more chips. You finish those, they'll bring you some more chips. So by the time your main meal comes along, you're practically stuffed on all the chips. So the Italian restaurant is similar, except that they do the bread rolls. Bread turns into sugar lightning fast. If you could do just let's say two things to beat diabetes. Let's say I don't want to go the whole way. I don't want to do all that you say, Dennis, but I'll do two things. I'd say, number one, get rid of sugar out of your diet. Number two, get rid of bread out of your diet. Now, I could say a lot more, but if I could only tell you to do two things, that's what I'd say to start with. Or if you say, that's all I'll ever do, Dennis, I'll just do two things. Not 3, not 5, not 10. I'll just do 2. I'd say get rid of the sugar out of your diet and stop eating bread and bread products. Now, a lot of people don't understand that when I talk about bread, I'm not just talking about sandwich bread. Some people say, well, bread, that's what you get in a big sandwich bread package. No, bread products are all over the place. Bread rolls and noodles are a bread product. And there are many different ways of eating bread products. A cinnamon roll is a bread product with a lot of sugary stuff on top of it. So you got to get rid of the bread. Anyway, sure enough, they brought out the bread rolls, and I didn't touch a single one. And I looked at the menu, all kinds of noodles, but the salmon I knew would work, and broccoli would be fine, and then the side salad. It's such a great meal and time proven as far as I'm concerned and as far as my tests are concerned. There would be no point to even testing my blood sugar. Now, I did do one thing with that salad. I got rid of all the croutons because croutons are, you guessed it, a bread product. So the croutons had to go, and I picked them out. I know that might sound silly for an old guy like me to be picking through a salad with his fork, getting rid of the croutons. But hey, you do what you have to do. As John Wayne used to say, a man's got to do what a man's got to do, and I had to do it, and so should you. So croutons have to go, but all the rest was fine. The cheese and the lettuce and anything else that was in there was no problem. So thinking about that and looking at my meal for that day at this Italian restaurant, you know, if you showed this meal to a doctor and said, well, doc, would this be a healthy meal? Salmon, broccoli, and a salad. There would be very few doctors that would say, oh, that's a terrible meal. That is a terrible meal. I mean, where are all the carbs? If you just showed them the meal, showed them the picture, and said, what do you think about this meal? There's almost no doctor that would say that's a terrible meal. But if you go to your doctor and say, well, you know, I've got diabetic problems, and I'm going to do the keto diet, many doctors, not all, but many will jump all over you and tell you how dangerous that is and why that's unnatural and not normal and how you're going to hurt yourself by not getting your daily carbs. They have no studies to back that up. The reality is there are beaucoup studies, numerous studies that show how valuable that kind of a diet is. And there's essentially none that say it's a bad diet. It will hurt you. Now, let me tell you something. When you're diabetic, when you're living at diabetic levels and your blood sugar's way up there, A1C of 8, 9, 10, 12, you're hurting yourself constantly. You are about 4 times more likely to have a stroke than you would if you were not at those diabetic numbers. You're about 4 times more likely to have a heart attack than you would be if you were not at those diabetic numbers. And according to one organization, you are 15 times more likely to end up with an amputation than you would be if you were not at diabetic numbers. That's not 100% chance of 100% increase of your odds of amputation. That's like 1,500% chance increase of your odds of needing an amputation than if you were non-diabetic. When you consider how much damage is being done, how much more likely you are to have problems, it makes you wonder about these people that say keto is dangerous. Oh, keto is so terrible. And these people that act like if you don't eat enough carbs, you're in trouble. The reality is if you don't get your glucose levels down and your insulin levels down, which chances are they're sky high as well, you are in serious trouble. It's not time to worry about whether you're eating keto or non-keto. I mean, just eat low carb, and keto is a perfect example of a low carb diet. It works very well, along with those that don't insist on quite a keto diet, but it's a very low carb diet, whatever you call it. And you know, for a lot of doctors, if you say to your doctor, you get your blood sugar starting to go down, you're starting to see success, he says, how are you doing this? You're doing very well. If you say, I'm doing a keto diet, he may gasp and he may tell you that's dangerous, that's no good. If you say, well, doc, I'm reducing my carbohydrates for the sake of my blood sugar, chances are he won't gripe, he won't kick. There's something about the word keto that doctors just hate. It's known as a knee-jerk reaction. The minute you say keto, the minute those 2 syllables come out of your mouth, now not all, but some doctors will just start screaming. It's dangerous. You're not doing yourself any favor. You're trading one problem for another. But if you simply tell your doctor, well, I'm reducing my carbohydrates so that my blood sugar can go down, a lot of times they won't say much at all, or maybe they'll even say that's good. So there's something about those 2 syllables, keto, that a lot of doctors don't like. And to be fair and honest, the reality is I've never been a pure keto dieter anyway. I just lower my carbs way down until I don't get glucose spikes. But the keto diet fits so closely to what I do that sometimes I'll say, look for a keto dessert or a keto recipe or a keto meal, even though in technical sense, I'm not a pure ketoist. But let's talk about the meal I had. Again, salmon, broccoli, salad. Now, let's just take a look at that broccoli. Suppose we decided we don't want to be keto. We don't want to be accused of being keto. We don't want the press to come in, the paparazzi, and snap a picture of us eating salmon and broccoli and a salad. So we swap out the broccoli for macaroni and cheese. That might satisfy some people. Now you're not eating keto. But is that really a good swap? Is that really a healthy substitution? Eating mac and cheese, which is a totally unnatural dish, in place of broccoli? Or what if we swap out a big bowl of corn chips for the broccoli? So now it's not salmon and broccoli, it's salmon and corn chips. Are we doing ourselves a favor? What about white bread? We delete the broccoli and we add a big chunk of white bread. Are we really doing ourselves a favor? Is that really a healthier diet? Does that put us in less danger because we eat white bread instead of broccoli? Or a large soft pretzel, is that going to help our diet? Or a baked potato that's going to turn into sugar in your stomach lightning fast? Baked potatoes are so close in how fast they turn into sugar to real sugar that there's almost no difference. They will turn into sugar lightning fast in your stomach. So, you could do these different swaps. And then you show a doctor, well, doc, I was thinking about having salmon and broccoli, but I decided I would have salmon and corn chips. You think I did myself a favor? Or instead of salmon and broccoli, I decided to have salmon and mac and cheese. Do you think that was a good option? Hardly anybody would be dumb enough to say, yeah, that mac and cheese, that is much healthier than that broccoli. Almost nobody would say that. Almost nobody. But if you bring up the word keto, they'll blast you all over the place. Some will, not all. And it is changing. But it's just ridiculous, really. If you stop and look at what's involved in healthy eating, which is basically bringing the carbs way down and eating low-carb vegetables and meat, salads, instead of all these other things like pretzels, like white bread, like baked potatoes, like white rice, and so forth. Of course, that kind of a diet, a broccoli or a salad or cauliflower or spinach would be healthier than all these other things. So don't let anyone intimidate you, make you feel foolish because you choose healthier choices and healthier options rather than all the things we've been so used to. It all comes from that notorious food pyramid, which just is not a good thing, and nobody ought to pay attention to it anymore. Even the regular nutritionists that haven't quite caught on to keto, they don't parade that anymore. They're kind of ashamed of it, and they ought to be. All right, there's my rant for today. God bless you. See you again soon. Probably most of you know my wife Benedicta, but few of you know the amazing paths God has led her to bring her to where she is today. Benedicta was orphaned at an early age and lived with an elderly stepmother growing to adolescence. They were so poor, Benedicta had to drop out of school and sell food door to door for them to survive. As a teen, Benedicta got a job as a housemaid, which developed into a nightmare. She was required to cook, clean, wash, take care of the children, and she had to get up at 4 a.m. every day just to get her work started. Worse than that, she was frequently beaten. At around 20, she moved to the huge city of Lagos where she started her own little business. Sometimes she prospered, but at other times she nearly starved and went days at a time without eating. At one point, she became so sick she passed out in her room and nearly died. She found herself outside of her body and she was able to see the splendors of heaven until she was sent back with a command to share her story. One day, however, her life changed when an American evangelist came to her community to preach. And of course, that was me. The rest, as they say, is history. Benedicta has shared her life story in a recently published autobiography, and you can get it on Amazon as either an ebook or a paperback. A link to this book on Amazon is in the description.